there's only about 5 or so companies nationally right now that I'm aware of that do these policies, that will allow their agents to offer these policies, will allow their customer to actually use them the way they should be used, and for you to be able to benefit for them for the purposes of what we're describing. There are a lot of companies that say they will, but then when you get in the inner workings of it, no, they don't. Right. And a good example of that is when we talk about you reaching that modified endowment contract limit. Some the companies that I'm talking about here, will notify you to say, hey, you are so-and-so dollars away from your modified endowment contract limit. This is the amount of money that you have available to add into this policy. And you already know, every year they do an analysis of how close are you to that limit. Not every company will do that for you. The companies we use will do that for you. I only use companies that will do that for you, because I can't come back with a client that I spoke to 3 years ago, and he's gotten a big, windfall of money, and now he wants to put all this in his policy. He goes and does it without talking to me. I don't know when that's happening. I wouldn't know unless the company tells me. So you want to be with a company that's going to notify you, hey, you're approaching this limit. Do you want to do this? Some companies are just going to let you do it, and it'll just happen. And once it happens, you cannot reverse it. You do not want to be with a company that's going to do that to you.
Right. That's a tough one to go ahead and take that hit with the modified endowment contract. That's definitely something that you just take a hit. It's like, oh man, it's definitely a hurtful thing, because you're in taxation mode at that point, and there's so much cash left up for taxation, so definitely, yeah. So we got one more question, and then I'm gonna ask Chris some questions, and then we'll just go ahead and wrap it up. The goal is, this is the question, Chris, the goal is overlapping policies to maximize financial coverage and minimizing taxation liabilities.
Wait, say that again now?
The goal is overlapping policies to maximize financial coverage and minimize taxation liabilities.
That is one of the goals, yes.
Okay, definitely. Absolutely. Definitely. I would agree with that too as well. I just wanted to ask that question. So, Chris, how does this get done? How do people start the process? Because so many people are behind. They don't have the information. How do they get started, Chris?
Well, first thing you need to do is have an analysis done on your individual situation. We offer a data sheet that I send out to everyone who asks for it. You can email me at info@ffecorlando.com. That's info at F as in first, F as in financial, E as in education, C as in centers, Orlando.com. So info@ffecorlando.com. If you send me an email and send you a data sheet, we'll send out a form to you that's going to ask you particular information. We don't need your account numbers or your personal information on that form. What we do need is numbers, the account balances, how much interest are you paying, what is your minimum payment on the debt that you're trying to take care of, what is your actual payment that you're making on that debt, how much are you saving, how often are you saving, what do you have as balances in your savings. That would be your 401ks, IRAs, any of that retirement money, any savings that you have in the banks as well. So once we have this information, we can actually show you a plan of action of how one of these policies can work for you. And our goal is to do it to where you don't come out with any additional money out of your pocket. That's the biggest thing that we try to do for clients, is we don't want to add anything more to what you're putting out. We just want to restructure and show you a better way to do things. So if you send that email, request your data sheet, that is the first step. And of course, my number's on it. You can call me at any time to ask any questions that you may have about this
service
as
is provided by freeconferencecall.com.
Chris, I'm happy that you have one of those businesses you can be in the public and still help public people out. I think, it's wow how you have such a quality, top-notch private type education product and service, and it's in the public, and a lot of people in the public have not taken advantage of it. It's still an elite tool, and it's just, I remember in our last episode, I asked you how many people in the country can do what you do, and you told me it was less than 1,000 people. And I think, for people that are listening to, like, who you're listening to, like, yes, Trust Christian, and then, I have Christopher Holt on. And so, yes, Christopher Holt is that guy that, yes, there's less than 1,000 people in the country that can do what he does in an industry. And the industry is very niche and it's very protected, and it's an elite tool type caliber industry. You hear about industry. It's like saying, there's a Rolls Royce and then there's a Honda. You know what I mean? So, there's, but the thing about it is, you were worth all of them. So you could always afford those cars, you just had to get the loans, because people can get loans and get cars. Most people do. So, there's ways to get that Rolls Royce. There's ways to get many of these things. And I think that individuals being creative, thinking outside of the box will really help themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
Chris,
mm-hmm.
Why do people need to do this?
Well, if you want to be efficient with your money, I mean, everybody here wants to, I can pretty much say if 99.9% of the people I talk to want something better for themselves. This is something better for yourself and for your money. You don't get much better than these types of systems. You just don't. I will argue up and down with anybody to find a better system that they can put into place other than a private banking system that is being run correctly, that is structured correctly and with the right company, and they're educated properly on it. I would argue with anyone that it is not possible that borrow the money from them, and they're going to get 6%, 10%, 18%, 20%, whatever it is, car loans, credit cards, student loans, all these different things that are being borrowed from the bank. Now, you think about those percentages I just put out to you. If they're paying out 1%, less than, we'll use 1%, we know they're not getting that, but let's say they're using 1% to pay it out to you for the privilege of using your money, and then they turn around and get, let's just use 6%, from the individual that they just get a car loan for, that's borrowing the money to purchase that car, that's a 5% spread that the bank just earned on your money. So if you think about that now, they started at 1%, they're paying out, yet they earned 5%. That is a 500% gain when they do the spread, which is us. You can get in your spread. That's where the money is made. And the process is you getting out of the mindset that you have to hoard up all this money and keep it somewhere in hopes of one day that I might have enough to retire on. You got to get out of that mindset. You see, that mindset that I'm just speaking of here is the difference between a utilization mindset versus an accumulation mindset. You see, the accumulation mindset of what I just described to you is like it's just like the Dead Sea. There's no flow, there's no motion, there's no life at all to it. It entails setting money aside in an investment vehicle and hoping that it grows enough so that one day in the future you can have enough to use it. That is accumulation mindset. You got to get away from that. You've got to get to an understanding of the utilization mindset, of using your money. Just like the Amazon River. It's a huge flowing body of water, full of life. Civilizations were built around it because of the richness of the moving, flowing water. So when you think about that with your money, utilization allows you to both prepare for the future and live wealthier today. It's far superior than just saying I'm going to accumulate money for myself. So,
well,
go ahead.
We got a question. Someone says, well, what would be the best policy, whole life or IUL?
It's the toss-up. Honestly, it's what works best for you. I don't have any particular preference between those two. Those are the two that you would use, a whole life or a IUL would be the two vehicles that we do use for it. But this is the thing. If you're using your policy to pay off debt, and you're looking at a situation here where you have including your home. You got $100,000 you own your home, plus you've got the car loan, you've got the student loans, you've got the credit cards, furniture bills, all these different things. You need to be in a whole life policy to where you can have certain guarantees built into the system that we can actually show you a step-by-step process, because we know what we're going to get from that policy. We already know. So when we factor in what we know into what your debt situation might be that we need to help you get paid off, now we can give you a structure of how to get that stuff paid off in a systematic fashion where you actually know almost to the day of when this bill is going to be paid off completely. So when you start doing that with that whole life policy, now you can create that spread because you already know what you're getting from the policy. It's going to be pretty much a guaranteed 4% today. That's what they're paying out, plus dividends, because we do use dividend paying policies that are structured correctly. Remember that, structured correctly. That's very important. So when we know these things that we're going to be getting from that policy, and then we understand how we can create those spreads through the debt payoff, because that's how you create the spread, is through you paying off the debt and paying that back into your policy, that you can create the use, but it's on an index of the market. And they'll give you a certain participation rate of that particular index. So if the market was to give you 10% returns or did 10% returns that year, and their participation rate was 80%, then you're going to get 8% return rather than the 10% in those policies. The other side of it is when the market was to go negative, you would only participate in zero negatives of that. You wouldn't participate in the loss. So it protects your downside when you start talking about IULs. But now when you're looking at IULs to pay off debt and use it for the purposes of paying off debt, we don't want to use that because we want the guarantees of the whole life policy to know when these things are going to be paid off. We don't want the fluctuation that an IUL can bring. And it's a matter of preference. I explain it both ways to people, and they tell me what they prefer. It doesn't matter to me what you use. They both will work. The thing is, it just needs to be structured correctly. That is the biggest piece of it.
Okay, Chris. We got another question that says, in general, should we use multiple policies?
Okay. But that's a good example of understanding how to utilize them as a banking system. If you started out with one policy, and I call it your bank because it's your bank when you do this right. You start out with one bank and you get to a point where these can be maxed out. That maximization limit is the limit where we don't want the policy to go above that because the proceeds in the policy become taxable. We don't want that to happen. So we keep it below that limit. That's the modified endowment contract limit, or the MEC limit. Once you reach that limit, and you will reach that limit if you're using it as we're describing to you, or we're teaching to you, excuse me, you will reach that limit in that policy. So once that happens, what we'll show you to do is to open a new bank or start a new policy. So you begin to have multiples of policies or banking systems that you're operating with as you go. As you max out one, you create a new one. You think of it now as you are the owner of your bank. So if you're the owner of a bank and you've got all these depositors coming into your bank to the point where you're like, oh gosh, we don't have enough. We can't accept any more money at this bank. I need you guys to go to another bank because we just can't take any more. Well, what do you need to do at this point? You're the owner. You need to open another bank so you can accommodate what's coming into your bank. So you think of it the same way. You want to get to having multiple banking policies. That's the goal.
I like that. Well, we got another quick question, Chris. What do you mean by being structured correctly?
Okay. In your policy, each policy they have certain costs in them. You've got the cost of insurance, which is, the insurance is your umbrella, so to speak. When we talk about proceeds coming out of these policies tax-free, it's because of that insurance umbrella. And that's why there are certain limitations on it that IRS allows you to go up to before they say, oh, well, hey, your cash in is going to be taxable because you've exceeded that limitation. So when the